Hi, it's time for another verb of the day. Today's verb is schedule. Let's take a moment and review some of the definitions or the ways that we use this verb. The first way you'll hear schedule used means to arrange or plan something to take place at a particular time. So I think for many people, we think of meetings, we think of maybe doctor's appointments, but you're making plans to be in a particular place at a particular time. Another and related way you hear schedule used can mean to make arrangements for someone or something to do something. This definition might connect best when you think of certain jobs, certain professions where one employee maybe starts work at 8 a.m., a different employee starts at noon, right? But you're making arrangements for people to be at a particular place and do a particular job. For now, you should know that schedule is a regular verb. If you want to make the progressive form of this verb, you're going to drop the E on the end before you add ing. And that's because our verb ends in the pattern of vowel consonant E. So most of the time when we do this in English, we're going to drop that E anytime we're adding a suffix that begins with a vowel letter. When we add that ing, it forms scheduling. Scheduling. Okay? The past tense and participle forms of our verb really just require us to add a D since this verb already ends in an E. Our base verb, schedule, ends in a voiced sound. So it ends with the letter E, but the sound it ends with is an L sound. And because it's voiced, it means the ED is just going to make a D sound. So I'm not going to add an extra syllable as I pronounce this. The past tense and the participle forms of our verb should sound like this. Scheduled, scheduled. Now, you might be happy to know no phrasal verbs for us to discuss today, so let's move into a little more practice and seeing some more examples here with our verb of the day. In this week's videos, I've really been focused on modals. These are words like can, could, may, might, would, should, right? And we use them in different kinds of ways. Okay. Today, we're going to look at using modals to ask for permission, right? So in these situations, we're asking someone, is it okay to do this? Okay. And there are three different ways we can ask for permission. It's using the modals can, could, and may. Okay? And all three of them really mean the same thing. What you're going to see from my notes here is that can is generally considered a little less formal. It might be more common for us to use this with friends and family. And then if we shift to could, we're going to get a bit more formal, but may is usually considered the most formal way to ask for permission. And in some families, some communities, if as children are growing up, if they ask for permission, like, can I do this, right? Many times they get corrected, and may I, right? Because that sounds again, a little more formal or more polite. So the pattern you're going to notice, and this might seem a little different, but we're going to start with yes or no questions because that is the most common way that people use that for permission, right? So children frequently ask their parents or their teachers for permission to do an activity. You see that with students of all ages and teachers. I know my students many times will ask, can I come late or can I leave early, right? But anyway, it does appear most commonly in questions. So our pattern is that we're going to start with a modal, then we're going to have our subject, and usually our subject is I, right? You are the one asking, is it okay for me to do this? But sometimes you might hear we if you're asking permission for a group of people. Okay? Then what you're going to see is our base verb. So someone might say, can I schedule an appointment with Dr. Smith? Right? Might be a nice way on the phone to talk about making an appointment. Or could you schedule me to work in the mornings? Right? This might be a question someone is asking their boss, their supervisor. Or may we schedule a follow-up meeting? That might be in a more formal work environment. Okay. Most commonly, what you're going to hear people say in response is yes, you can. We can say that with any of these. Again, if you're in a more formal environment and you say may, someone might just say yes, or they might say yes, you may. Sometimes to be a bit more informal and I think this can seem even a little more friendly. You'll hear people say just things like, sure, of course, right? Trying to be very reassuring that it is okay for you to do a particular activity. Now, of course, sometimes you're not given permission to do something. So someone might say, no, you can't. Or maybe like, no, you may not. That might be another way. And sometimes people will start their answers with sorry, but, and then offer an explanation as to why permission is not being given. Okay. So you can see that from my notes there. We will take a moment and look a little bit at making an affirmative statement. So maybe you want to, before someone asks you for permission, maybe you just want to give permission to someone else, right? To do that, start with a subject, use your modal, can or may, okay? Then use the base verb. I've got 2 more examples on the screen. You can schedule a consultation next week, right? Again, maybe giving permission for someone to do that. Or you may schedule your fall classes beginning July 1st. Okay? Again, following that same pattern. Now, if you want to do negative, again, that's perfectly okay. We're going to start with our subject. We'll use a modal, then not before our base verb. I've got 2 more examples on the screen. You can't schedule this meeting on a Friday afternoon. Or you may not schedule an event here in the month of May. Right? So here are 2 situations where we're not giving permission for something. And just note, again, the only time we're using could for permission is in questions, not in statements. Now, let's spend a moment looking at some words that are related to our verb schedule. And the first word we're going to look at is just the noun form of this word. The noun schedule has the same spelling and the exact same pronunciation. It also can be used in a couple different ways. We'll talk about 2. The first way you hear the noun schedule used is to talk about a plan for carrying out some type of process or procedure. It might even be something that's giving you a list of certain events and times, days and times. So an example of how you might hear this used. What's the schedule for the day? Right? So here someone might be asking and thinking about, well, what are we going to do at 9 o'clock? What about at 10 and 11 and so on? Okay. Now, a second way that noun schedule gets used is to refer to what's considered an appendix to a formal document. And might think of appendix as like something extra, something with some more detailed information. But most of the time, this might be a list, it might be a table, some type of inventory. So I know in legal documents, I've seen things like see Schedule A for the expenses incurred, right? So maybe in some kind of legal agreement, the total is there, right? But this extra document is going to kind of give you an item by item list of expenses. One more word for us to discuss today, and that's the noun scheduler. That is a person or a machine that organizes and maintains schedules. An example of this: talk to our scheduler about scheduling next month's follow-up. Okay, so here you might hear something like that in a doctor's office, or maybe with a dentist, some other person who has that responsibility of getting people at or on the day's list of patients to be seen. Thank you so much for watching today's video. I hope you have a great day.